everybody. My name is Erika, and welcome to the Browser-Based Podcast. We are here at AI Engineer World's Fair in San Francisco, and I am with Sam Bhagwat from Mastra. Sam, could you tell me a little bit about you and what Mastra does?
Yeah, excited to be here. We love browser-based. I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Mastra, which is a TypeScript agent framework, harness framework now too. We were sort of one of the we're one of the leading agent frameworks. People use us to build, customer-facing agents. People use us to build internal agents. People use us to build sort of like developer agents like AI SREs. We integrate with browser-based. A lot of times the agents will browse the web,
Yeah.
using browser-based as well.
So cool. I first met you when you got into Y Combinator, which I guess was only a year and a half ago. Feels like
Somehow
it's been a century.
time flies so fast in this world, Eric.
Dude, it does. And so I met Sam. He was like, we're building a TypeScript agent framework. My co-founders and I are like some early TypeScript guys, and like people need a better way to build agents. And I was like, I love it. Let me be friends with you. And then I saw him 6 months later and he was like, I wrote a book. That's what we have in our hands.
We had 2 books actually.
Oh,
So
this is new.
this is the first one, Principles of Building AI Agents. And then we recently released Patterns of Building AI Agents. So this is how you build an agent, and that's how you get it into production.
I love the sound of that. I feel like I've been spending a lot of time with our customers recently talking about like what exactly does it take to get agents into prod. So I have a couple of questions for you, particularly like when you were building the framework and releasing this book and sort of starting your company, like what were some early findings about like how people were building agents before? And I guess like some of the gaps and areas you guys felt like you really needed to cover and fix in building sort of your first TypeScript framework.
So early on, the perception, and when I say early on, I mean, late 2024. So this is like not actually that long ago. But in late 2024, the perception was very much that Python was the way to, do all AI stuff.
Right.
And, I think that's very true for MLE and anything that requires lots of like data munging. But agents were really just starting to emerge at that time. And as we started to build agents, we were working on something else at the time. It felt to us very much like agents, were like kind of like building a web app. You're munging around data from like a lot of different sources. You're like integrating a lot of things together, and then you were sort of building something that could take action. And like, so we were kind of sort of OG JavaScript, TypeScript people. I was the co-founder of Gatsby. My co-founders, Shane and Abhi, worked at Gatsby with me. And it's just like, gosh, why? In fact, if you're looking for something that's like really good at like gluing together APIs and like and munching around data, like you should really be building in TypeScript, right? And it was just crazy to us that the consensus was that like, no, you should just use Python for it. And so we're like, not the people like us don't want to use Python.
Like, why?
Why? I mean, like, the advantage is that like TypeScript is more information token dense, right, than Python, in the sense of like what does Replit build? What does the Replit agent write? What does the lovable agent write? Well, it's writing TypeScript, right? Because you can build the back end, you can build the front end, you can do it all in one language. You don't have to like, it's sort of like more token dense, it's more token efficient. In many ways, like agent, like, I mean, TypeScript just passed Python as kind of the on the GitHub sort of like stat boards as like the most used programming language. Like I think like the age of agents is actually like a renaissance for like, and a continued growth for TypeScript as opposed to like other languages, right?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I live with a data engineer who is not a JavaScript and TypeScript fan. He's definitely long Python as a person. But what I think even he's found working at a startup and having to build agents, in fact, an agent using the Mastra TypeScript framework and with Stagehand, our agent framework, sort of inspired by Mastra in a lot of ways. He's like, no, TypeScript is better for this, for navigating like crazy front-end websites, for taking action. Like Python is really great at observing. Python is really great at data and modeling. Python is not really built for computer use particularly, which I think is really fascinating. And what has been really fun about working at Browser-Based is like learning about sort of where each programming language has like huge sort of advancements or like legs up on the others when it comes to like building better browser agents.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And like the agents are like, so much of what we're doing is like browsing the web to see like, hey, like what can I like perform an action on behalf of a user? Can I get this piece of information? And like ultimately, like agents are only as good as the actions they can take and the data that they have. And as we've seen, it's interesting because like a lot of teams sort of like, they'll be building agents and it will take time to productionize agents. So they'll have to go through early rollouts. They'll have to, you sort of make sure they're not ending up paying their whole ARR to Anthropic, right? Why does this user cost us $1,000 per month to serve?
Right.
How can we like do some prompt engineering? How can we do some context engineering? How can we like maybe switch to some cheaper models? How can we make this thing run in a loop less? Like people spend a lot of time optimizing but like a lot of it is about the actions and a lot of it is about the data that they
makes
need.
a ton of sense. And I think for like the really big enterprises that are like trying to ship agents into production, they have so much data. They have so many users. They probably are running quite complex tasks. Like that is going to create some crazy token creep. Like they don't want to spend all of their ARR.
Absolutely.
Like they don't want to go to their quarterly earnings report and be like, so we built an AI product and we also spent more money than we ever have ever.
It's so interesting to watch really the vibe shift in the last, 4 to 6 months from, like we're just giving our engineers unlimited token budgets to, wow, we spent our whole 2026 budget and we don't actually see a productivity gain. One of the things that I will also say, especially, like obviously we were both at, startups but like one of the things we observe at some larger companies is that the companies that are that give their engineers the largest token budgets, but like at the same time, it might take 3 months to get something in through procurement. And one of the lessons of like running an organization is that, if you're trying to solve things and make things more efficient that are not the bottleneck, you're not actually making your organization more efficient. You should start by thinking about as an organization, hey, like maybe you should fix your procurement process before you give your engineers, maybe give your engineers like, $1,000 or $2,000 a month of tokens. That's fine, but don't give them like $20,000 a month of tokens before you fix your procurement process, right?
Well, what's funny about procurement actually is that it is a widely known manual based in the email, checking out websites, looking at security docs process that can absolutely be done by an agent
Absolutely.
in the browser. So I think that that's really funny and so true. And I like, well, so you told me this Patterns for Building AI Agents book is about like what it takes to run agents in production. Like what would you say are some of the like big themes in this book? And like I know you've been working with customers at Mastra, like what are some big takeaways that you've learned from your customers that maybe have like informed what you put into this book?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of agents have an interesting development life cycle, and often, the engineering work of the agent is up front. Maybe you don't really need to write so much of a spec. You can kind of like, almost figure out how to get it working. But then you sort of start running into the hard problems of like, how do I make sure my agent is accurate? How do I worry about, the cost of running this agent at scale? What are like the weird types of edge cases, like the different types of queries that people might, and like those are something where like it's nice to be able to like create a set of evals, which is almost more of like a product brain type thinking than like traditional, and then be able to have like a sort of like boil it down into like a couple of single numbers on accuracy and cost, make the accuracy number go up, make the cost numbers go down. Meanwhile, while you're doing that, you're sort of expanding it to a wider and wider audience. And like, again, these are mostly concerns for like external facing customer agents.
Sure.
If you're building an AI SRE, you're a little bit more able to sort of like, okay, cool, I can kind of test whether this works. Because I'm kind of the user.
Tinker a little more.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's. I would say it's like inherently. I mean, AI SRE sort of high risk, but inherently lower risk because it's not touching your customers. It is touching like the most important thing in your code base, which is incident response and reliability.
Yeah.
Hard to say, but it is different. Like you are your own customer. The people you're serving are your teammates, and like it is kind of a very different sort of like framework for your mind. Like when you say like from like an evals as product thinking perspective, like the set of evals and benchmarks and like requirements that you set for something that isn't going to be exposed to your customers is really different. What have you learned? Do you guys have like a benchmark that you've created for certain things?
The benchmarks we mostly rely on, external, like we long mem eval,
Sure.
other sort of like, the code writing and execution. We haven't created our own benchmarks.
The reason I ask is because like we primarily service our partners, DeepMind and Microsoft, on evals using Online Minds Web and Web Voyager. And we found like sometimes the evals that already exist can be like a little bit reductive. Like they're not really testing for perfect accuracy because they're like a set of tasks that aren't included in those benchmarks. And so we actually just recently created one. So I was wondering if that was something that you guys have been thinking about because it kind of gives us better control on understanding the performance of the model.
We've thought about the first sort of set of evals that we're probably going to make are a set of are a set of evals for sort of how well agents are able to write Mastra code, because those are sort of like as as sort of like closely tied. I mean, most of the time, like right now, we're just hearing increasingly like, well, why did you choose Mastra? Well, I asked Claude Code, or I asked Codex, and Codex just started writing, the Mastra for me. And so like, like we would like to make, given that we're hearing that increasingly much, we would like to make sure that they're using the most up-to-date APIs, that they're able to complete the tasks as quickly as possible in the most token dense way as possible. We've done certain affordances as well, like we'll like download a local copy of our docs alongside the framework, for example, so that like that way you can get the version of the docs that's version for your for like the version that you have installed, in case an API has like changed.
And then it's like the harness will, like the agent will just read your file system, which I actually think is very smart. And I think that's also something that I, like you said that, Claude Code, Codex are just like, oh, well, they just started writing Mastra code. I'm like, that is so crazy to me. I don't even think Claude Code was out when you started this company.
No, I mean, it wasn't. And
that
like,
is bananas.
Right, and then there's also an interesting thing, and you guys have probably seen this as well, but like there's a delay between when you release a feature when it gets into the, then obviously it's available on web search
into the mind of the
but then it gets
AI.
to the corpus later, right? And so like like sometimes the agents are like a little bit behind, which is okay. You just need to like give them the tools to get up to date if they're like using a version of your their pre-training corpus is like a little out of date.
So funny. It's crazy how that happens. Like in developer, like when you were working on Gatsby, like that was not something that your team was thinking about. They weren't thinking about how the LLMs would learn about your product, so that way it could use your product, promote it, get people to sign up for it on other people's behalf. Like we have a ton of signups coming from agents from like that are like working on behalf of users at BrowserBase. And when we started BrowserBase, that was not like that wasn't happening.
You weren't thinking about that.
We were working for the signups ourselves,
You were thinking about good old-fashioned developer experience.
Human person.
Yeah.
How
can I build the best API? How can I make this the most understandable for? And suddenly it's a whole new game. And I think we're adapting to this world. But honestly, like maybe we're experts on an older version of the world. Maybe we're,
I don't know. Well, and that's another question that I have for you. Like, how do you feel as a CEO and founder running a developer tools company when like the target is constantly moving? Like the models change. Fable's back online today, everybody. So it's like, like the models change, the capabilities expand. What agents are able to do every 3 to 6 months seems to like have like a step function and improvement. Like, how are you building the framework and like road mapping that to be prepared for advancements? Like
we don't, and I'm curious about how you guys do. We don't make like roadmaps more than 2 or 3 months in advance, right? Like we say, this is what we're shipping this week, this is what we're shipping this month, this is what we're shipping like in the next 2 or 3 months, and like we don't. But like we're all Firehouse attuned to Twitter. We're all sort of just like every model release. We're just paying attention to the capabilities. Like what is possible now that wasn't possible. So my talk yesterday was about every harness will become a claw, and it sort of like laid out this like hey, you move from an LLM to an agent an agent. An agent can take actions with like tools and memory. Then we're moving from an agent to a harness. We have like parallel sub agents with clean context windows. There's like then moving from like sort of like a harness, a local harness to a cloud harness. You get this like always on. You have like mobile apps. You can text it. Moving from a harness to a claw. You have like a heartbeat. It has subscriptions. There are these like levels of the agentic spectrum that like we're constant, and like we have to be constantly attuned to how do we help our users. Last year's talk that I did at AI Engineer was about agents versus workflows. And gosh, that sounds so outdated, right?
No, like agent versus workflows sounds like very old school.
No, exactly, right? Like, and that was, 2025, that was a year ago. And I had this, we were actually like really early in saying like agents or workflows, why not both? Don't have a holy war of agents versus workflows. You should be, and like now that sounds like, again, like it's ancient times.
Well, I would say with regards to that sounding like ancient times, like when you service all types of customers, like we have super fast growing, crazy AI native startups, like shipping the craziest stuff as our customers. And then we have like very old school legacy, like storied companies also trying to build and ship agents to production, like they are thinking more in workflows, and that's okay because they have a million other risks and concerns, both token cost, efficiency, sort of like data exposure, determinism, things that they need to cover that really isn't well positioned with where the models are today to service their customers in like a even like harness or claw format. It really does need to be more of a workflow. And so it's crazy to me because it does. I'm like, yeah, that totally sounds outdated, but also you almost have to like service every part of that stack.
It comes back to that quote, like the future is here, it's just not distributed evenly yet, right?
Yes.
Like, and I think like we think about Mastra as like what we call like a domain complete framework, which is it should have all the primitives you need. So no matter where you are on your agent journey, and it's okay to be wherever you are,
right?
You know, we will have, if you need agents versus workflows, you know, you can have both. And if you need a harness, if you want to build your own Claude code, if you want to build your own Claude tag, if you want to build your own Devon, you can do that too. If you want to build your own software factory, if you want to have durable long running and agents, you can do that too. And you can, like, you should be able to complete your whole journey of getting to, you know, wherever you are in that journey. There should be a primitive for you.
Yes, and I definitely feel like that's why our companies are so aligned and why we've just had such a good relationship with you, is because I feel like are built on the very same sort of foundations, which is like, what are the primitives that we need to build this product to service anybody who's building anything on the web? And that does cover like a very wide assortment of work and needs.
It's why we, like, when we saw you guys come out with StageHand, we're like, this is exactly right. Of course you have the browser primitive, but you also have an agent that can use the browser.
Yes.
Then now you guys also have search, right? Like it's sort of like,
and we released Fetch. We have a model gateway product, and we released an agent harness yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like we have to cover the whole spectrum because everybody needs something different.
Yeah.
And because you're right, the future isn't evenly distributed, which is really crazy. And I would say it's like, I think something some people here might forget.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like this is part of DevTools too. Like, you know, I ask people like, you know, well, what's the difference between your Next.js dev server and your, you know, render or your Vercel deploy preview, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing, but it's a local version versus a cloud version. You need both, right? Like people in like and as DevTools like providers and vendors, we need to like, you know, give people like all the different form factors they need. Like that's
I totally align with that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Okay, I have time for one more question.
Yeah.
I've been asking everybody this. What would you say is your like biggest, most hatery AI hot take?
Ooh, build agents in TypeScript.
You heard it here first, people. Do not build agents in Python. Agents belong in TypeScript.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Sam. I had a great time talking with you. It was good to catch up.
This is so fun.
It was really fun.
Browser-based heart Mastra heart browser-based.